I know this sounds crazy, guys. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but these dudes found me up here and they were keeping an eye on me, and I knew they were. And I said, I don't want to know. And then everybody's coming to me, Mike, what's going on? What's going on, Mike? What's going on? And I'm just like, oh gosh, this is really, really bad. The Navy SEAL Team 6 came out and said, we have no idea what these guys are talking about. Okay, so that blew their whole cover right there. During this time, I did commit a crime, and it was kind of unknowingly to me. He said that he was going to do some immigration paperwork or something in LA. Hello folks, and welcome to another awesome episode. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing a story that happened to me. It's one of my craziest life experiences, and I figured now would be a good time to share it. It's been a while since it's happened. The dust has settled, and right now with all the current investigating going on with government waste and government fraud and that kind of thing, it's opening up and shedding some light on kind of what goes on maybe in the inner workings with the federal government. And today I'm going to share my story where I personally witnessed fraud and theft within the federal government. And in today's story, I'm going to tell you all about it. And I'm going to warn you right now that I might drone on for a little while. There's so many details to the story and so many names. I'm going to try to maybe cover some of the names, maybe not, and I'm gonna probably leave out a lot of details too to try to shorten it up and not lose your guys' interest. But if you guys can just hang in there with me, this is a pretty crazy story, and it's quite amazing after I look back, of how I'm nobody. I'm nobody, and I got caught up in a Pentagon scandal. I was a witness in a Pentagon scandal that had to do with suppressors, the manufacturing of suppressors. So it's a crazy story, and we're gonna jump into it. And I'm gonna take you guys through the whole story from the beginning to the end, and kind of let you guys know the outcomes. And yeah, then you guys can post down in the comments below what you think about all this mess and that kind of thing. So let's jump into it. So this all started out, I want to say probably around maybe 2012-ish, sometime in that area. I went to work for an individual named Mark Landersman. Mark Landersman, he owned a machine shop, he owned a mechanic shop, and he was starting to build custom laminators, right? Kind of like a boutique type of deal. So I went to work for him to work in the machine shop and build the laminators for him, the machines. So I went through some training with some other company owners, and I would build the machines. It was kind of low production, and then I would work in the machine shop. When I wasn't building the machines, we were all kind of situated in the same industrial kind of complex or whatever, right? So working for him for, a year or so, maybe, a little bit of that and this. And I kind of noticed over that time that maybe Mark was struggling a little bit financially, but he never would talk about it or show it, but you could kind of tell. And there was even some times where we had some hiccups with payroll and that kind of thing. So which, whatever, small companies, people trying to hustle and do their thing and whatever. So we're kind of in that situation, just plugging away, doing our thing. And one day a guy in a nice red E36 BMW pulls up into the complex there and gets out. It's a very tall man, very large fellow. And Mark introduces us to him, and it's his brother. His brother is David Landersman, and he is a naval superior, whatever. I don't know his exact title, but he's kind of up there in the Navy, and he works at the Pentagon. And he was, I believe he was dressed in a suit or, khakis, whatever. Appropriately dressed, tall, good looking man, came in, and then this was his brother, and he was introduced to us, and he walked around the shop. He kind of toured the shop, and we were kind of thinking maybe his brother's just out visiting, and whatever. So maybe about a week later or so, kind of hard to keep the timeline exactly straight, but a little bit after that, Mark called a meeting for the company, a small company in the machine shop. So I worked there, his wife worked there part-time. We had a secretary, we had a shop foreman that ran the show there. So it was 4 or 5 people, handful of people, and we sat down and we had a meeting. And this meeting, Mark was explaining to us how we were about to receive a government contract to start manufacturing suppressors. And we all got really excited because we were all thinking that, oh man, this is going to be our win. This is going to be our out. We're going to be able to make money and possibly grow and maybe even grow into a larger facility. And this could be a really, really good thing for us. And so yeah, we were all very excited. So come to find out, we found out that Mark's brother, yeah, he was with the Pentagon. He was going to help us get the contract and all that good stuff. So exciting times. Everything was on the up and up. And we started making some prototypes. And the whole idea, I want to let you guys know, like, anybody can build suppressors, especially nowadays, or 3D printing suppressors. The ingenuity or selling point behind Mark's suppressors were that they were you could disassemble them and you can clean them in the field. And so they consisted of several like pucks kind of, and they would screw together, okay? And we were making the prototypes out of aluminum, and they were kind of like coned or whatever, like these pucks, kind of hard to explain, where they're kind of coned in, and then you would just stack them all together. You would screw them all together. So there was a time where I was, handling these. I wasn't doing the actual machining, but I would help with deburring them and whatnot. The shop foreman was, mainly making all the prototypes and whatnot. But I was handling them and deburring them and, playing around with them or whatever and blah, blah, blah. And this was before I was really into guns. And so one thing that I did do during this time, I did commit a crime. And it was kind of unknowingly to me, but this is all, I was never charged for the crime or whatever. But so another not business, like financial partner, but say friend of Mark and me and whoever, was a guy that I won't mention his name, but is a good friend of mine. He had a 50 cal, a BMG, and Mark wanted to get the threads off the barrel of that BMG. And so this other fellow and I, we were really good friends. We'd hang out quite a bit. And so they were like, hey, you can just drop the gun off at Michael's house and then I can bring it into work on Monday. And that's where I committed the crime, because you're not supposed to have that weapon in California. You can't have possession of it and blah, 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 blah. And I was up front with all my investigators about that. So I was never charged with any of that. And that was small peas compared to what was going on. So yeah, I took possession of that weapon. I pulled it out. It was, I think, probably weighed 40 pounds. I could barely hold it up, and I got a picture of myself holding it, boxed it back up, and then I took it to work the next day, handed it off to Mark. So time goes on, and work gets slow, and in this time, this was kind of a foggy spot in this time. So basically what happened is Mark ended up selling the machine shop to the shop foreman, okay? And what they did at the same time is they cut it in half. And he sold off some of the machinery, kept some of the machinery, and the footprint, the square footage of the shop was literally cut in half. And then the other portion of the building was rented out, okay? So, and we'll get into that too, because the owner of the buildings comes into play here not too long from now. So when that happens, I kind of went and I got another job. I was actually working at Hobbytown. I was a manager there at Hobbytown. But I always kept in contact with the shop foreman. And so what ended up happening is, after he bought it, I got a key to the shop. So I had access to the machine shop, and I would come in after work sometimes at nights, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week. And I would work from say like 6 to 9 or maybe 7 to 10. I work a couple hours in the evening, just running the CNC machines for. It was like a side hustle for me, and it was working out great. And so that dwindled down unexpectedly and kind of quick. And during this time, I had stopped working at the Hobbytown and had went to work for Roy Cook. Now Roy Cook's wife owns all the buildings that we're talking about, okay? The complex, she owns all the buildings there. And I went to work for Roy, and he opened up shop building laminators with like 3 or 4 of the buildings. So it was a huge operation. And I ended up going to work for him. So anyways, we're all hanging out. Everybody knows each other in this complex, and it's really cool working atmosphere, and we all kind of hang out and at lunchtime or whatever, and blah blah blah. And there was an AMSOIL service shop in there, and we knew that guy. There was also a Smog shop there. That guy was really cool. Everybody knew each other. It was awesome. So just hanging out there one day, and I noticed another guy going into the machine shop, and this was towards the afternoon or whatever. And I'm like, I'm like, that's weird. And I'm talking to my shipper, and I'm like, because the shipper was really good friends with the shop foreman too, or at the machine shop. And I'm like, I'm just joking around. I'm like, is that my replacement? Like just jokingly or whatever. And we all kind of laughed it off or whatever. Well, come to find out, so during this time, Mark and I had a little beef because I was under the impression that he owed me maybe $1,000 or whatever, from payroll and whatever. He was under the impression he didn't. Whatever. I'm not going to get into that. That was actually brought up in the court cases too, which was kind of weird and relevant. But so there was that. So there was a little bit of beef between Mark and I, but nothing crazy, But I think what happened is Mark wanted to push me out of the machine shop and get somebody in that didn't have any, knowledge of anything that was going on, so they could start manufacturing these suppressors in the machine shop without me there. Okay, which is a red flag because if he was doing everything legit, then he wouldn't have cared who knew. Okay, so so this is probably, say, 2 years from when we had that meeting about how we were going to start producing suppressors. And by this time, because I'm not really working in the machine shop, I thought it's done. Maybe he didn't get the contract and they're not doing anything, and it's just on the wayside. So I just continued on with my life, working there, building laminators, and kind of running the show there. And I would come in and I would open the shop every day, every morning, and whatnot, and that was kind of just my routine. Well, one morning I come in, I always was the first person there in the complex area, and I would open the shop up, get everything ready, get the lights turned on and everything for everybody to come in. Well, I showed up one morning and I noticed a bunch of cars in the parking lot, and I noticed a bunch of cars like on the parks on the streets, and I was like, that's really weird. But I blew it off and I just went into work, and I started opening everything up, getting everything on. And so the shipper showed up. He's usually the second guy there. He's always an early bird like me. And he shows up and he comes right up to me and he goes, Michael, he goes, what's going on out there? And I go, I don't know, what do you mean? He goes, come here and look. And so we open up, the doors, one of the big bay doors, and there's got to be 15, 20 agents out there, and they're strapping up, they're putting on bulletproof vests, and we were like, whoa. So this was a weird day because a couple things happened that I thought were really, really weird. I'm going to say one thing now. The shop foreman, in all the years I've known him, he's never missed a day of work, ever. But that day he wasn't there, and that was kind of weird. And I had heard through the shipper, because the shipper, like I said, was really good friends with him. He said that he was going to do some immigration paperwork or something in LA. And like I said, I just thought that was kind of weird. So the day they raided the shop, nobody was inside the shop, which again is just completely weird. So by this time, most all of our workers are there in the shop now, and it's probably, I don't know, say 7:30 in the morning, and Roy's wife shows up, and she comes right up to me. She's the owner of all the buildings, okay? And so just kind of picture this in your head. We're kind of across the alleyway watching these feds get geared up and get set up right in front of the machine shop, and we're sitting back watching this, and I'm standing next to the owner of all the buildings, and she looks at me and she goes, you know exactly what this is about, don't you? And I looked at her and I said, I don't want to know. And then everybody's coming to me, Mike, what's going on? What's going on, Mike? What's going on? And I'm just like, oh gosh, this is really, really bad. So the other weird thing that happened is, so they pull out one of those battering ram things because they're going to bust the door down. And Diane, that was Roy's wife, she's the owner of all the buildings, she starts yelling at them across the alleyway. She's like, don't break that door, because she owns the door. She's going to be out $1,000 or whatever if they bust that door down. They're not going to pay for it. She goes, don't bust that door down. I have a key. I'll let you guys in. So she starts walking over there, and I watched all this, okay? She's walking over there, and by the time she gets about halfway across the alleyway, they had opened the door. They had a key. So really weird stuff there. The owner, yeah, because he was the shop foreman, he was not there, which he never is not there. And the feds, which were about half FBI agents and about half NCIS agents, the Navy Crime Scene Investigation or whatever it's called. And they walked in the door. And I was like, oh boy. Now, mind you, I still had a key to the shop. okay? And so that kind of made me nervous. And so Diane stays over there and she starts chatting with the agents, okay? While they're rummaging through the shop, there's a couple agents standing outside, they're talking to them and this and that. And I'm kind of just hanging out watching all this, just tripping out. Like, I'm tripping out. She walks back over and she looks right at me and she goes, "They want to talk to you." And I'm like, what? So that's how I got drugged into it. And so basically what happened there is I had to walk over. And I remember it was a cold morning too that morning. And I was really nervous and I was cold and I was like shivering and shaking. And so I was talking to an FBI agent and I was talking to an NCIS agent. And I invited them into my office on 2 different occasions and they wouldn't come in. I told them I was cold, I'm shaking, you know, I don't have a jacket on or whatever. They would not come into my office. They wanted to converse with me outside. And that whole conversation was recorded because it all came back up in court. And I basically told them I knew why they were there. I knew what they were doing. And, you know, when Diane came over and told me, you know, that they want to talk to you, she also said, like, this is your chance. Because she knew that I had beef with Mark and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to throw people under the bus, especially, you know, they're trying to owe me $1,000 or whatever. What's done is done. They knew what they knew. And yeah, I had an interview with these agents, and that was about it. And I thought, okay, maybe they're going to just do their thing, and then that's going to be it. Not the case at all. So during this time, the owner, Roy Cook, the owner of the lamination shop, whatever, he got really sick and he passed away, and that was a very unfortunate thing. And so this all kind of went down at the same time, and that's why Diane was over there with me, because she was kind of trying to help run, and we ended up selling the laminator business to a company back east, and we were kind of shutting down. So in between the time that I was interviewed there at the raid, the company had shut down. I had lost my job. I had started collecting a little bit of unemployment, and I was making plans to possibly move up here to Oregon, okay? So I'm unemployed, I'm at home, sitting at home, and actually my daughter came out, and my daughter visited me from back east, so she was out hanging out with me, and sitting there, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I get a knock on the door, and I open the door, and there's 2 federal agents there. They're from Camp Pendleton, and they served me with papers. And I was like, wow, you know, they explained everything. They're like, yeah, we're from Camp Pendleton, blah, 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 blah. You're a witness in this and everything. And I was like, okay, wow, this is crazy. I'm going to have to go testify in court down at Camp Pendleton or whatever. And this is crazy. So they left. I threw the paperwork on my desk. And about an hour later, I went back and I started reading the paperwork. And I started reading the paperwork, and it started talking about if I need financial assistance for traveling. And so I looked, and the court is in, you know, Alexandria, Virginia or whatever, you know, and because technically they told me that's where the crime was committed, at the Pentagon, so that's the where they got to hold the court or whatever, okay? I'm not on the up and up and all that stuff. So I was completely blown away. I was been subpoenaed to court for a court date in Washington, D.C. So I immediately started making phone calls. I called and talked with the reps or whoever was going to assist me financially, because I'm not going to come out of pocket to go fly across the United States to go out there. And yeah, we set up everything. And so I would notice during this time too that I was being followed, and that was kind of tripping me out. And the other thing that was tripping me out is you can't ask questions to the investigators. They can't answer your questions because that's considered witness tampering. So through this time, I get a visit from the NCIS agent about once a week. He'd come up in an unmarked car, I'd pull up in my driveway, and he would come up, and I'd come out of my house, and we'd shoot the shit for 30 minutes sometimes, okay? I had him personal cell phone numbers, we would call each other, okay? It was, you know, he had me. I was in the back of his pocket. So I start talking to my family about this, and I'm starting to get really nervous, because I'm going to tell you why I was starting to get nervous, because I knew that Mark Landersman, the guy who was orchestrating this along with his brother at the Pentagon, I knew he had racing ties. He would go down and he would race the Baja trucks or whatever, maybe in the 500 or whatever. I don't know if they ever raced the 1000, but they were down there in Mexico, always playing around and always doing this thing. My brain went instantly to cartels. I thought that he was producing the suppressors for the cartels, and transporting them down to Mexico through his race team. That's what I was thinking. And nobody could tell me anything, and nothing was in the news yet. And so I was really getting really nervous, especially when these people were following me around. These people would follow me around. They'd sit and park like a couple blocks away from my house, and they'd sit and watch me, follow me home. One day I had 3 unmarked cop cars follow me home, like all the way home. Like it's just crazy stuff. Like it's so blatant, you know? And so I was talking to my dad about it one day, and he told me, you know, he goes, Michael, if this was the cartels and you were a witness, he's like, you'd already be taken out. He's like, I don't think it's the cartels. And I was kind of like, yeah, maybe makes a little sense. And, you know, mind you, we were in Temecula, hour and a half from the border. So time goes by. I take my flight. I leave from Ontario in Southern California, and I fly all the way out to Virginia, which is right there at Washington, D.C. Flew right over the Pentagon, and it was a one-way flight on United Airlines, and my one-way flight back on American Airlines, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I get out there for the first time, and the first time is not a court date. It's actually a grand jury hearing to where I have to testify in front of a grand jury. And it was very intimidating and this kind of thing. So I had to go through a couple days of prep before I did that, to where, so basically I sat down at a table and I had 3 Navy agents on this side, and I had 3 FBI agents on this side, and then I had the district attorney or whatever, the prosecuting attorney, whoever, general attorney, whoever. That guy was really cool. I actually liked that guy a lot. And I had to have several meetings with them that lasted for hours and hours and hours. And they would show me pictures. They would show me pictures of people. They would show me pictures of people on the firing range. They would show me parts of guns, and they would show me all these things, and they would ask me if I knew these people, if what I have seen, what I haven't seen. And there a couple times they showed the suppressor parts, and I was like, yeah, that's what we were making. And I've held those in my hand, blah, 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 blah. And then they show me pictures of people I didn't know, people I did know. And you know, I had to spill the beans on everything basically at that point, and no going back. And yeah, and that's when I admitted that I had the 50 cal in my possession and that kind of thing, and how I didn't want to get other people involved, and that's why I wasn't really quite clear with them in the initial interview that was taking place in the alley. So I kind of just came clean with them about all that, and they were accepted that and didn't really mess with me, you know, for that or whatever. So yeah, I had a couple days of prep. Then I went in, did the testifying in front of the grand jury, and that went pretty smoothly. I actually had everybody laughing in there because I made some stupid comment about being back east or whatever, and it went over well. And I thought, you know what, and they were kind of telling me, the agents were kind of telling me, he's like, you know what, I think we're going to get a plea deal or possibly whatever, and he's like, most likely that you're probably done with all this. And I was like, yes, you know. And during that time, I had told the agents and the attorney, you know, when we were going through these interviews, I was like, hey man, you know, I'm thinking about moving. And they were telling me like, yeah, as soon as you move, you got to tell us where you move, where you're going, what you're doing. And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. And they're asking me where I was thinking about. I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about going to Oregon and doing that. And they're like, yeah, that's a beautiful place. That'd be a good move. And they were asking me a lot of questions about everything, you know. So yeah, I go out and testify, come back, and pretty much lose communication with all these agents. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm in the up and up. I'm good to go. There's nothing going on. And I move up to Oregon. I didn't tell anybody that I moved to Oregon. And a couple months go by, and I start noticing people follow me again. And I know this sounds crazy, guys. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but these dudes found me up here, and they were keeping an eye on me, and I knew they were. And sure enough, I get a phone call, and I think the phone call went to my work. Okay? So, yeah. So I get the phone call, and they're telling me that I'm going to have to go back and testify in court because this is going to go to court. It's going to go to a court trial. And I was like, no way. And so yeah, all the following started again. I would notice unmarked cars sitting across from where I worked here in Oregon. And then same at my other place where I used to live, I would notice people parked over there and kind of follow me around and that kind of thing. Is kind of eerie, but at the same time, I kind of feel like they were trying to protect me a little bit maybe, or protect their asset. I don't know, you guys can comment down below and see what you think, but just a whole crazy experience, okay? So I go out there, get geared up again. So this time I fly from PDX out to Virginia or whatever. I go out there and, you know, just get in a hotel. They pay for your hotel, they pay for all your food, and everything's really good. And but the way they do things it's kind of weird, because this is kind of, to me, it was a high profile case. And, you know, I get in the elevator one morning to go downstairs to get my breakfast, and open the elevator, and the shop foreman's in the elevator. And I'm just like, whoa. Getting back to the shop foreman, I want to tell you guys one thing real quick that I missed, I left out, that just reminded me. I knew I was going to leave some things out that were kind of important. The whole key thing, when I said that the feds had a key when they went in. The next day after the raid, I walked into the machine shop to talk to the shop foreman, because him and I were pretty cool. And I wanted to make sure that we were on the up and up. And he flat out told me, he goes, "Did you give those people a key to my shop?" And I go, "No, Carl, no, not at all. Like, I still have the key that you gave me, and it's in my truck console. I can go get it right now and show it to you." And he's like, "No, you know, I don't care about that." And so I told him, I just looked at him and I said, I was like, "Look, man, I know things are kind of funky right now." I was like, when this is all said and done, we're going to go out and we're going to have a beer together, and we'll talk this out. I was like, "But no, I didn't do anything like that." So there was already a little bit of tension there, right? Well, we're at the hotel room, you know, a couple years later, and I open it, boom, there he is. I'm like, whoa, dude. And it wasn't cordial, but it wasn't bad. I hopped in the elevator with him, and we went downstairs, got some breakfast, and I seen another face down there, which was crazy. Retired LAPD that I knew, that I had good times with, and he jammed me up about a couple things too. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. I go take a walk outside, got people following me, but I'm walking around, you know, the DC area or whatever. The day of the court day, I remember this long-haired fella was watching me. And I'd walk around the block, he'd walk around the block with me. Just wild stuff. So get in there, I testify, I'll leave out the details of testifying or whatever, but I came face to face with Mark Landersman, and then his attorney pulled me aside and was trying to fast talk me, and I should have never even talked to his attorney, because he was some greaseball or whatever, and they were basically lying and trying to cover up what happened. So I'm gonna break it down and try to get this wrapped up here, guys. Basically what happened and what I witnessed is, so you have Mark Landersman. He was the owner of the machine shop and sold it off to the shop foreman. He also had his race shop, whatever, okay? So he does this contract with his brother, David Landersman, and there's another name involved, Lee Hall. David, Mark's brother, was Lee Hall's superior, okay? And they basically drafted up a contract for $1.6 million to produce these silencers. Now, the cover-up was that they were for SEAL Team 6, and that was brought up a lot of times in the court, and then every time that was brought up, it would be objected because it was supposed to be classified. So that was their whole defense, is this is classified, can't talk about it, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Navy SEAL Team 6 came out and said, we have no idea what these guys are talking about. Okay, so that blew their whole cover right there. The contract was for $1.6 million for 349 suppressors, okay? It's $4,500 each. The Washington Post estimated these at $10,000 for all of them. The funny thing is, they dubbed these 74KA, which is AK-47 backwards. And I think everybody watching this knows that SEAL Team 6 doesn't use AK-47s, and that's what they were threaded for. They were threaded for an AK-47. They were built, they were shipped, and they were shipped to some kind of a military warehouse. They were shipped, they were received, they were thrown aside into the warehouse. Mark Landersman was paid $1.6 million. It was a complete scam. It was a complete fraud. Okay? In that time, Mark went out and he invested, I want to say he invested over $500,000. There's some reports that say he invested $1 million into a brewery. I don't think it was that much. He also went out and bought two $10,000 welders for his race shop. He bought a restored Porsche that was worth quite a bit of money, I think. And maybe some other investments here and there or whatever. So yeah, he got paid and he went out and spent our money, our tax dollars, you know. So the way, this is the funny thing, the way they caught this is the FBI wasn't even looking for this, okay? They had no clue about it. They accidentally caught it because they were going over some emails. They were going through some emails looking for something completely different. And they come across these emails with Mark and David, the brothers, talking about this silencer deal. And what they discovered in the emails and what they were saying is that, like, they found this print somewhere online, some black dark hole website, right? And that it was so easy you could make it in your garage. And in fact, some of the reports that you can find will tell you that he was making them in his garage, which is false. They weren't. They were being made in the machine shop. But they were simplified enough that you could do something like that. So basically, it was like a thrown together, hogwashed suppressor. It was a complete scam, is what I'm trying to say here. And so they found these emails, and they're like, what? And they kept going through the emails, and they found out, yeah, they awarded this dude $1.6 million. So there's my story. I was a witness to federal government fraud. It happens. And like I said, I'm nobody, and I witnessed it, and I just so happened to see some of it myself. So you guys take everything for what it is. It's, whenever there's money involved, everybody's trying to get their hands on it, in some way or another. And there's always scammers out there. So I think that when we see these people trying to curtail some of that, I think it's a great thing. I think it needs to be cheered on instead of pushed back against, because there's a lot of people right now pushing back against Elon Musk and his progression, or whatever you want to call it. I feel that he's helping the United States by downsizing the government. The government's out of control. It's way too big. There's way too many regulations. There's just all kinds of stupid stuff. And, I was a witness to it, and I seen it firsthand. $1.6 million. So what about all the other contracts that they didn't catch because they weren't going through emails looking for something else, right? So, like I said, the reason I wanted to make this video is because what's currently going on, and I have a different view of this whole thing now. Mark Landersman, he stole from the public, and he was convicted. That's the other thing. So he didn't spend that much time. I think it was mainly probation. The other guy, Lee Hall, I think he got a little bit. The funny thing is, David Landersman, which is somewhat of a decorated high official superior or whatever in the Navy that works at the Pentagon, all charges were dropped, and it was official in 2017. It was going back and forth whether they were going to get him for something. And so that just goes to show, like, if you pay your dues in life, you might get a little more leniency towards the end of your life. And I don't know if I'm for that or against that, but that's what happened, and that's how the military handled that situation. So he walked scot-free. I think Mark was ordered to pay some of that back. I don't know exactly what they all got back. I mean, maybe the Pentagon has stock in a brewery down there in Temecula somewhere. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they got the Porsche back, and they took the welders. I think they confiscated the welders back too. But so yeah, I mean, it was a slap on the wrist. Now that we look back at it, it was a slap on the wrist. And of course, it was first offense and all that stuff. I think Lee Hall actually got a little more in trouble than Mark did. But again, I never met Lee Hall. I think I've seen him in court a couple times or whatever. But yeah. So there's that. You guys can soak that in. Hopefully you guys were able to follow along with the story, and I didn't lose you, and it made sense. If you guys have any questions or comments, of course, post them down below, and maybe I'll post a link or two down below in the comments about some news articles where you guys could read about, what happened. Again, you got to remember that the news articles are somewhat biased. Like always, that's how the news works. And like I said, I think I read on the Washington Post that they said that he manufactured these in his garage, which is false. And there's some other things that might be a little off or whatever. But yeah, government fraud is here. It's been around for a long time. There's people stealing our money, and I'm very thankful that we have a team right now working to help curtail some of that and make America great again. Until next time, folks.